Yat greeting word for hello. I know it's got multiple meanings behind it, but we just accept it as hello, but it really means power from heaven. Uh, we think Navajo languages is one language, but it's actually two languages. Mother Earth's language and Father Sky's language. We say Yat Father Sky's language, and Huizhong, Mother Earth's language. So both are greetings, but they're one is Yat is more dominant right now. Clayton Long is my name. I'm full-blood Navajo, but my father says I'm part Hopi also. So, and that's probably true just because of the long years of being among each other. And I'm one of those that don't move around too much. I move around in the county, but I don't. But as far as the school district, I plan it myself with the work here. Grew up traditionally, meaning my first language is Navajo. My culture is Navajo. My folks that I grew up with, the only person that kind of knew a little English is probably my uncle, who went to World War II and came back with his own way of thinking. And Kayenta, Arizona is a little place and just past the border into Arizona, northern Arizona. That's where I grew up. This is a workplace for me, meaning when I first graduated from the university, I was looking for a job and I wanted to be close to where I live, Kayenta and reservation and among my people. Found a job here in San Juan County with the San Juan School District. I started as a teacher and then I became an administrator, high school assistant principal, and then I started working with a school district office, which is where the superintendent works. So I was a bilingual education director. And all these years together would be about 38 years. I grew up in a boarding school, first 4 years, in a boarding school in Kayenta. And of course, I had no clue English, mainstream society. That was a foreign world for me. And basically, rather than coax me into it, I was forced to learn another language. That was part of an agreement with the Navajo Nation that all Navajo children would need to learn English and basically forget about your language, your culture, your way of thinking, your way of life, your family. A boarding school is a place that you kind of like or put in a camp, and that camp is like a military camp. So basically I marched everywhere. I didn't dress the way I used to do. I didn't talk the way I didn't talk. I went silent because that was my way of resisting. So the first 4 years was no learning, meaning I didn't pick up the English language. I tried, but I basically resisted, silent resist. I didn't. Some boarding schools really were nurturing, where mine was, you're a military person, we treat you like military, you have to march, you have to do everything that we say, and you change that way. So it was forced. That didn't do very well with me. But the ones that were nurtured well, they actually took English as the dominant, and they said no more Navajo, because mainstream society is all about English. So from this day forward, my family will always just speak English. I knew that someday they would feel a little uneasy that their children did not learn, and now they can't speak to their elders or others, But that indoctrination is both. And even though it was a negative experience for me, I made it a positive experience to say, no matter what, on all the days of my life, I will preserve this language somehow, some way. And so that's what I'm doing. The reason why I became an educator, one, it's because I wanted to be close to my people. So the work that was on near the reservation, most folks would say education is already set up. So going back home, the work that I decided upon was education. But what inspired me to be an educator is, could I be an educator, come back, learn what I didn't learn the first few years? Also, could I influence a school setting where I could share the language and the culture? Bilingual was kind of the key. So it inspired me to figure out a way how to preserve the language. Again, you go back to, if I'm going to be connected to people or kids, what is their culture today? Not grandma's, not grand. What is their culture? And their culture is technology. That's what they use constantly. Even if on the reservation they have iPhones and so they're drawn to it. And nobody forced them to do it. It was just within their world, and everybody was doing it throughout the world and then out to them. And because of that connection, I said, why don't I begin to preserve the language? Another thing that I saw happening was we taught the language. A teacher would teach a language for this class, and they would design a little format lesson plan for the teacher. The problem with that was a teacher would go by that lesson plan and teach the class, and then they would take that paper and stick it into a folder somewhere. And that was it, never to be seen again. So what I was seeing was the beautiful language that was being taught to the kids were only given one time, and then it was let go of. So I said, is there a way to preserve this? And that's how I got involved in technology. You know, I wanted to be close to the kids, which got me to thinking I gotta learn. And then I also, being a principal, we have computers that was coming into the school. I had to say, in order for me to share or tell teachers to start using this, I have to start using it and use it as a tool, which is kind of how I convince a lot of teachers. Use it as a tool. Use it as if it's another way of a teaching element. Teaching is good, but you only do it one time. But when you preserve it, you have to have a computer to preserve it. And so that was a cultural, interesting thing going on. The culture would say, do not put that on the computer. Do not share that with the world. Do not, the sacred, the language is done by the holy people. They're the ones that said, this is your language, you're the only one that's ever going to use it. And so I had to figure out a way how to tell my people, it's time. It's time to use another good thing for our language, for our children, for our future. And so what I was saying is, are you teaching it in the home? Is it being taught in every school? Is it being promoted by the nation? Is everybody fluent? The answer was no. It was slowly going to die. For that reason, preserving it became my feeling that needed to be done. So the first one that I came upon was the Rosetta Stone, the CDs, and they had a way to say, even though we're doing the major languages, let's choose a indigenous language that we can kind of help preserve. Duolingo came because I was searching for a way for a teacher to mix with the kids and they become creators together without making it a can idea, but growing idea. Whatever you create, the next group can also add to it. So it's growing, it's like a plant. I love that about Duolingo. Philosophy, foundation, a way of doing it, a way of preserving the language. My thought is, it's like greeting. It's like if I wanted to get to know somebody, why don't I kind of get to know them at a people's level, and then say, so what do I learn? Greeting in our way is called ke, and ke is everything. Definition: relationship. Relationship's everything, and it's not just people relationship. It's your animals. It's your surroundings. The sky. Anything that's you can see is basically. Do you have a kinship term for it? For example, sky became Father Sky, and Mother Earth became Mother. So that is the start of, for me, learning. That's how you learn. It's kind of like in mainstream society, when you really learn, it was probably from your mother or father or grandpa, because they already knew you. They knew how you thought. They knew how you laughed. And so it was easy for them to say, we already have a foundation on which we can teach you things. As time went on, I said, let's put that into the school. Let's put it into my classroom. And so when the kids came, I got to know them first, before we started a curriculum of any kind. So in dominant society, bear is fun little fuzzy thing. In Navajo culture, Navajo way of thinking, he's a very sacred animal. He lives in a place called the mountain. And because of that, he rules. And he is so sacred that only every so often we can talk and visit, but only when it's really needed. Other than that, we shouldn't even put our foot at the same place that he walked. So that's how sacred this bear is. That would send a signal of what are you going to do with it? What's the purpose? Is it going to be positive or negative or what? But we always have a little thing that says that there's always a way to use what you have. Because we're more into fuzziness, this is okay. Every culture has its own value of certain things around them. I mean, if we had a volcano here, we would value the volcano. That's a sacred place. He talks. He gives us direction. He gives us understanding of this and this. Our Navajo world in the first world, that's how that world got destroyed. What I'm pretty much understanding is we live in Alaska where all the volcanoes were, and that was our first world in a sense. You can see certain connections where, for most Navajo traditional people, they're looking first world, second world from the ground. But in my mind, I'm relating it to travel that we did. And when I meet the people up there, they'll say, "Let me tell you about you guys. You guys, this mountain here, this White Mountain, that's where the Navajos used to live." So they have their version of who we are from the stories that they handed down. And they'll tell you exactly why we left that place. The Tanana people, right on the border of Canada and Alaska. The Tanana had a village, community, and when the border was drawn between Canada and the United States, they were separated. There was the United States Tanana, there was a Canadian Tanana. So they just call it lower and upper Tanana. And so now they're in different nations. But we lived near that mountain called White Mountain, which is a volcanic mountain. Through ash, this is 700 years. 700 years ago, and before then, 700 years ago, through ash, about 2 foot deep. And it covered all vegetation. And because of that, the animals could not eat. And we're inland. We don't do fish. We just do inland animals hunting. And so when the animals started migrating to a different place, we start migrating after them because that was our food, And my question to the Tanana people was, so you were living here too. How come you didn't follow the animals? Oh, we did. We all joined. We all said, let's go follow the animals, just like the Navajos were taking off, and we're going to go follow because we're also hunters, inland hunters. And so we started going. And up there's a whole bunch of lakes. And so we passed this lake, big lake. And all of a sudden we heard a voice. Please stay, don't go. We will be your food. You will survive. And the voice came out of the lake, and it was the fish. And so we listened to the fish, and we stayed. And we became fish eaters from that day forward. That's what they're saying. I was there for a good summer and also came back in the winter. And so within that amount of time, I was able to begin to connect. So when they say tu, I said, oh, you're saying to, and they say tu. I said, is that water? Oh yeah, that's water. After we started traveling, we just kept traveling. We became travelers. Navajos are like travelers. So when they came down, some of them kept going all the way up down to Central America. So you could actually hear stories of Navajos that way down there. By that time, the separation occurred, just like the separation between the Apaches and the Navajos. They loved the mountains, and we loved more of the plains. And so our way of ceremonies all kind of stayed with the area where there's more like the mountain is the strength of us all, kind of thing. But then they separate themselves too, and it's usually because some kind of disagreement or something. And they became about 5 different nations of Apaches. We just label them Apaches, but they're just all Athabaskans. Yeah, but some of them actually live in Mexico. There's actually, you can go there and you can actually talk to them in Navajo, and you can understand each other. So my thought, we went to Russia with kids. There's indigenous people in Siberia. There's about 30 different tribes. They're not Russian people. They have their own culture and everything. So we decided to take kids over there, which in a sense is taboo because you live within a sacred mountains, and anytime you go beyond that, you're going into another people's land and culture, and so to be able to do that, I asked a medicine man to bless the children. That we're going on a purpose. There's a reason why we're going over there. Reconnect with other indigenous folks, and we want to have a good experience. We want to share information from here, and then they'll share information from there. We're actually going to have an exchange. So the medicine man made it so that they bless the children so they'd be safe, and they will return in safety. They'll be traveling on a plane, which is not a real Navajo thing, but we did all those things. And so when we came back, we would say, we had this reason, we had this way, this is what we did, this is how we returned. Oh, okay, no problem. So there's always a way to be able to be part of this. So my thought is, could we do a cultural support by having somebody bless the toy, that this is a way for my children to preserve the language. It is my way for me to say that this is going to be a key thing for the little ones to be able to reestablish connection with language, culture, history, or whatever. That would be interesting. I separate reading and writing. I teach it totally separate because in boarding school they taught me how to read and write English, and we became great spellers and great readers. We didn't know what we were talking. We don't know what we're reading or writing. we can perfectly write and say read, but we didn't know what we were talking about. And so I separate that in Navajo. I said, I can teach you separately reading and writing. In Navajo, a sentence and a verb are both sentences. Shiyate, I like this particular thing that's right here. It's one person. It has beauty on it. So when I say Shikyat, just the look to that says to everybody, I know exactly who you're talking about, So it's kind of like a quick language within a sentence, So that's what a verb is. A verb is everything in Navajo. A verb always comes at the end. It never starts a sentence or middle of the sentence. It stays at the end. The subject and the verb are the two that kind of control. In the middle, you can involve all kinds of stuff in there, but you can never understand the whole sentence until you have a verb, and then to back it up, have a noun. That's it. That's how Navajo is. So my principle in my teaching or in my philosophy, or the word is simplify. If I'm talking about a ceremony, I say, what's the heart of that? What's the beginning of that? What makes it all come together? The big picture is there, but what makes it work the way it works? And from there, I can that's the name, that's the purpose. From there, all the details are right there, So when I talk about the language, Navajo language and culture, I just use the 4 sacred mountains. I say that's chapter 1 to the east, south, chapter 2. So the land is like a book, but the land is the book. The land. If you go to the east, this is what you'll find. This is what you will know, And to the south, to the west, there's a clockwise motion to these mountains.
What inspired you to make the Pledge of Allegiance to the Navajo flag?
It was mandated that every class should say the Pledge Allegiance. So in English, everybody was doing the Pledge of Allegiance throughout, all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade, you know. And so when we decided to do something in the Navajo class, because kids were being shuffled, separated, and those that were wanting to take Navajo, they went to Navajo class. So in there, we decided, what if we said a pledge to the Navajo flag or the United States flag, either one, don't matter. So we made it so that we pledged to the American flag, but you could also do one for the Navajo flag also. And then it just stuck. It just stayed. Everybody decided that's what we want to do.
Some people that I've interviewed, they said, well, won't having less languages be beneficial for communication? Because then we can all communicate.
Yeah. So I love the story of the folks in Africa. There's 6 different groups of people that live in the same area. So rather than say one dominant language will conquer all the other languages, let's all learn each other's language. It makes it more beautiful. So I can go to anybody, even though their language is this and my language is this, I can speak in any of the 6 languages that I've learned. And they did that. They just made a commitment to do that, and they learned each other's language. My father, as a medicine man, learned English because he was working with a farm where that's who they were. When he did a ceremony, he used the Navajo language. He lived next to the Hopi people, so they learned from each other ceremonies. So he picked up the Hopi language. And then the Spanish were kind of showing up different areas. So he started picking up some Spanish language. It was based on just who lived around you. And we just learned each other's language. Traditional Navajos, they love the R sound, the Spanish R sound. Because we don't use R. In fact, in our alphabet, there's no R's. Instead of saying orange, which I had to learn, I used to just say onch. I didn't know my voice didn't know what an R sound is like. But our Navajo women kept hearing the R rattle sound. It was neat to hear. So now they said, I love the sound. Maybe I'm gonna name my child Rosetta, you know. And I love that R. So now there a lot of girls are named Rosetta or Rosie, or my wife's name Rosie, you know. so that's how that sound came into.
Not Ali ka ben and